Hey everyone, welcome to Cuberviews episode 25. This is your host, Ian Braverman. Today I am joined by Austin Hale, otherwise known as Judge Bones, the famous judge in the community. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing really well.
Awesome, I'm glad to hear. We were just talking a little bit about recording, about how you got first place at a vintage tournament yesterday. How'd it go?
First place. That's an exaggeration. In actuality, I got 25th of 26.
And what were you playing in that tournament?
I was playing Jund Goifs, and I had a great time, but Glaring Fleshraker had other plans for me.
And you got a prize, Glaring Fleshraker.
I sure did to commemorate my performance that day. I will never forget how this went.
Yes. And yeah, we've met a few times now in multiple different events. I think everyone knows you at this point if you've gone to different Cube events, whether it be Vertex Philly or Cube for a Cause or Cube Con. You're a pretty prolific judge, Judge Bones. So I'm really excited to be talking to you today about some great cubing. Before we get started, I say it every week. If you happen to be in the area of Avon, Connecticut, come join us at Games IRL. Always looking for more cubers. Yeah, so Austin, introduce yourself.
Well, I will usually introduce myself as Bones to friends and to gamers, but I also accept my legal name, Austin. I've been playing Magic since Guild Pact, so 2006, coming up on 20 years. I got a Guild Pact theme deck with GameStop store credit, the code of the Orzhov, and I went home and played it against my friend who had the Boros Legion theme deck. And then my friend liked the playstyle of white black control, and I liked the playstyle of red white aggro, so we traded all the cards we owned with each other. And ever since, I've been playing red aggro decks, and they've been playing black control decks. Then after that, I played some casual standard, just kitchen table Magic for a long time. Got to play through Time Spiral, got to play through Lorwyn, some of my favorite sets, Alara. Took a short break right after New Phyrexia because I did not enjoy New Phyrexia, so I missed Innistrad, which is pretty brutal set to miss out on, especially for draft. I really liked Ravnica because it was where I started, so whenever Return to Ravnica was announced, I was like, oh, I have to get back into Magic. Played that. I really liked the Gruul and Return to Ravnica block and Gatecrash, and then I played the Teamer and Cons block right after that. And then we never stopped. Been playing ever since. Started cubing right around Cons-ish because I remember I had a budget cube that I made where every card has to be under $5. And when Dragon's Target came out, Kolaghan's Command went into the cube because it was so cool. I had all these like really good modal effects in the cube, and it was under $5 for like a month. And then it was a lot more than $5, and I had to take it out. That cube was like just a value engine for me where I was constantly buying low and selling high. And it was not intended to be profitable, but it quickly paid for itself just because I was like, oh, this card is new and seems cool. It's less than $5. I'll take it. Oh no, it's really good. I'll sell it. Buy 3 more cards.
It was an investment.
Yeah, it turned out. And
That's
yeah,
funny.
then yeah, since then it's just been cube for me is my main hobby.
Great. So what is your favorite one drop red aggro creature of all time?
Oh, whoa. Swift Spear's really good. Goblin Guide's really good. For a time in Zendikar Standard, I was playing a deck that was all one drops. It was like 16 lands and 44 one drops. I had to borrow the Goblin Guides because Goblin Guide was so expensive just to play that like at FNMs. And it was not a good deck, by the way, but I enjoyed it. I love playing one drops. Raging Goblin is like one of the first creatures when I first started learning how to play. I was like, you're telling me that on turn one, I can already start winning the game by damaging my opponent? Sign me up.
How do you lose?
How can you come back from the psychic damage of having the opponent lose life on the first turn?
That's so powerful.
So I probably would say Goblin Guide or Raging Goblin is a nostalgic answer. But it is
Beautiful.
so funny to think about how I had to borrow Goblin Guides back then, and now there's like 100 versions and they're $1 each.
They've been replaced by the monkey.
That's true.
And what are some of your hobbies outside of Magic and what do you do for work?
I play a lot of video games. Just recently got a bunch of games on the Steam sale that I'm churning through. Because I've been flying to Cube events, I bought a Steam Deck and I've been playing on my Steam Deck, which I've been having a great time with that. I also do a lot of emulation. So I have a bunch of like Pokemon ROM hacks that I play on a little Retroid Pocket, which was my former Steam Deck airplane game. Also, my wife and I watch a lot of movies and shows, kind of cinephiles that way. and play a lot of board games. She and I have played the two-player version of Wingspan probably close to 100 times. We really like that game and a couple of other games whenever we have other friends to play with. For work, I am a network engineer. I do a lot of router programming and router commission and decommission.
Another software engineer who does cube. What do you know? I think that software engineers just like to design cubes.
Can you believe it?
Very awesome. And yeah, today we're talking about the Museum of Modern. So where do I go to find this museum? What's the entry fee into this museum?
This museum is free as long as you can go to where it is, much like other museums.
Yeah, tell me about this cube.
This cube is my love letter to the way modern used to be. The inspiration for it, as I mentioned before, as we were talking before the show, I did a little bit of research back into what I was thinking whenever I was first designing this cube. When New Phyrexia came out, they printed Gleeful Demolition. So if you recall, it was the second copy of Cold Oath: A Rebirth Effect, where you could lose one artifact to get 3 goblins. And I love goblins, and I love 1-drops. So I had tricked myself into thinking that there could be a cool modern deck that was 8 Cold Oath: A Rebirth effects, or Gleeful Demolition effects if you're new school. And so I was playing Reckless Bushwhacker and Goblin Bushwhacker, and like, oh, this is the new 8-whack. You can make so much power so fast. And then I got stomped by Crashing Footfalls when I took it to FNM. And I got stomped by something else from Horizons. And I saw the post in my group chat where I was like, Modern would be a really cool format if they hadn't destroyed it. So then, as is often the case, I get an idea in my head, and then I have to make a cube list. And then I'll tinker with that cube list like endlessly for 2 or 3 days. And then I will be done. I will rest. I will like, okay, I got the idea out of my head, and now it is done. It is on paper. In this case, I enjoyed the cube list a lot. I had no intention to ever build it. And then I submitted it to KubeCon for consideration and got in. So then I had to build it and test it quickly. And luckily, it was pretty fun.
That's so funny. So KubeCon forced you to make this cube.
That's true. And it is actually not the only time that has happened.
What other cube has that happened for?
So that was at KubeCon 2, this happened. And then at KubeCon 3, I submitted World War of the Spark, my 100 Planeswalkers cube. And that got in, and the exact same thing happened. I had to build it and play it really fast.
Wow, that's so funny. You should just submit cubes that you already have built.
Well, I do, and then different ones get voted in. I can't help it.
Hey, it's not my fault. It's the people. What about Modern from 2012 to 2018 is so iconic to you? It's just because it's pre-Modern Horizons, or did you play a lot during that era, Modern?
So it is a little bit more specific than that. So 2012 is really just like meaning the beginning of the format. And then 2018, I do specifically cut off. So before Horizons, we had Guilds of Ravnica, Ravnica Allegiance, and then Dominaria. A lot of people consider War of the Spark kind of a turning point for card design, power level, things like that, especially with the 3-mana Teferi. But actually, I'm going to blame the Dominaria Teferi for being a big turning point in Modern, because Teferi Hero, it changed the blue-white control deck completely. Instead of having to win with like Celestial Colonnade or Dragon or Ojutai or Geist of St. Traft that you have to protect with your control deck, it just does everything. You play Teferi, you don't have to worry about wrathing it because all your wrath only destroy creatures. And then it does everything for you. It's removal in a pinch. Otherwise, it's free card advantage, and you have counter spells. So you can progress your board and keep your mana up the whole time. Nightmare. So that's what I considered a turning point. Guilds of Ravnica had that block had Phoenix, which was also huge in the format at the time. So I just wanted to rewind just a little bit back to Rivals of Ixalan. That block gave us Kitesail Freebooter, which I think is pretty formative for the humans deck and was not oppressive in any way. And that was like a clean end year, 2018. So then in 2019, whenever we get the Horizon sets, obviously that is a huge change, but it wasn't just stop right before Horizon. I did give a little bit more of like, okay, when did I feel like Modern was changing?
When did it go sour?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say that. Also, you asked if I play a lot during this period. I did play a lot, but not decks like this. So the format was kind of the de facto way that people played Constructed in my area. Obviously, Commander was really popular, but there weren't big Commander tournaments in the area, like where you would go and there would be 20 to 30 people all playing in Commander pods, which is what we have today. At that time, Commander would be like in a corner, a couple of pods playing, and there would be a 20-person Modern event. on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. It was just very popular. And so I would play a lot of like budget or kind of oddball modern. I had an 8 whack deck. I had like a Gruul Zoo and Naya Zoo deck. I had a Black White Aristocrats deck that I would borrow Dark Confidants to play. So I was really familiar with the format, but I wasn't playing anything like in these decks. So like these iconic cards that are now such staples of the format to me, like Tarmogoyf and Liliana the Veil and Thoughtseize, I actually couldn't afford, but I was playing against them all the time. And so I was really familiar with them.
I mean, it was totally understandable that you couldn't afford them. Back then, Liliana LaVeil was $100, Tarmogoyf was 200, Dark Confidant was 50. There
Yeah,
were some really
Snapcaster.
expensive staples back then.
Yep, yep, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny the cards that you mentioned having been the turning point, like Little Teferi, Big Teferi, all have been completely phased out at this point.
Yep. Hmm.
Modern, I think around that time started to what a lot of modern players I've heard say be a rotating format.
Yeah.
We saw Modern Horizons 1 completely shake things up, and then we saw Fire Design with cards like Oko, Uro, Feel the Dead, and just all these cards that just completely messed up the format and were these sleeper cells that were just waiting to ruin the format even more in the future. Like Underworld Breach now is a huge problem in Modern. Now it was already banned in Legacy. So we, it was definitely a different time before that. And I had the chance to play not this cube, but at CubeCon a couple of years ago, the Modern Darlings Cube,
Hmm.
which has a lot of similarities. It's inspired by an older Modern, and I had a blast with it. So I'm really excited to talk about your cube today. And tell me about the overall construction of this cube. How did you go about designing it? Because there's a lot of really interesting parts about it. For example, having many duplicates and not just two ofs, but three ofs, four ofs. I think that you are very well known in the community for creating really creative cubes that really appreciate, like having really popularized the desert format for cubes. And this cube having so many duplicates is so cool. How do you come up with these unique designs and these ways to construct the cube?
Well, I've been exposed to a lot of different types of cube design. So I'm pretty sure, like, I know that I'm copying 3 packs of 20 double picks all the time from Commander Legends draft. I want to say I originally thought about 3 packs of 20 because of Derek Gallen's 4 packs of Magic from CubeCon. I think that used to be 3 packs of 20, and then it got changed to 4 packs of 15. Whenever I'm constructing a cube, I'm thinking about all the ways I've seen cubes done and what might be the best for my design. The reason that this one is double picks all the time, in addition to 3 packs of 20, because there is such a heavy fixing density and there are so many specific combo decks, it felt really good to get those double picks. So if you have Twin and Pestermite in the same pack, you probably take the Twin and then hope that Pestermite wheels. But if you just have double picks, you don't have to worry about it. You can just take both. But in doing so, you may be giving up Scalding Tarn or Steam Vents or something that you need to protect the combo, like Pact of Negation. So you still have interesting choices because the pack size is so large. It's probably correct to take the two combo pieces, but there could be something else that draws you a little further and you think, maybe if it's like Kiki Jiki's a little bit more narrow, maybe that can wheel around. But since it's 3 packs of 20 and everybody gets double picks, you're only going to wheel around a couple of cards. A lot of these are going to get taken. So I think it has a really interesting, almost skipping the draft round energy to it because I'll take this, and then my second pick, which is what I would have taken if it wheeled around, is this. A lot of times you also get, I'll take a land and a non-land, and then you can just be slowly constructing your mana base really well. You can also, if there's nothing in the pack, whenever you get down to like 8 cards, it'll be, well, this is either fixing or maybe it's a sideboard card for me. And then this is a hate pick. I don't want anyone to get this second birthing pod or whatever, things like that. The singleton breaks, I have never been shy about. If a card is correct for your cube and you want duplicates of the effect, you should not devolve into Searing Spear, and you should simply duplicate the correct effect. I have argued about this many times with many people, especially in this format where I have a large cube size, 480 cards. I would be digging really deep if I was trying to artificially maintain singleton. On top of that, I'm trying to recreate a constructed format, and they had 4 ofs. So obviously I was going to be very happy about breaking singleton. It's only going to reinforce the feeling of the format more. The 4 ofs, 2 ofs, 3 ofs, My philosophy is that the four ofs are all the fetch lands because everyone had access to a lot of them in Constructed, and one card in each color that is so iconic that every deck would be interested in playing it in that color. So those are Path to Exile, Snapcaster Mage, Thoughtseize, Lightning Bolt, and Tarmogoyf. Any deck that's in those colors will consider playing that card. So even if you're just like Abzan Pod, you will take Tarmogoyf because it's Tarmogoyf. Why wouldn't you take it? You can pod it, or you can just attack with a 4/5 and kill your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. This cube, as it's mentioned in the Cube Cobra description, is very focused on trying to recreate the feeling of older and modern decks, and not just trying to recreate the feeling of older modern, but actually recreate those old modern decks. Like the decks that people draft be very similar to those specific decks that were popular at that time, like Human, Zoo, Delver, the Rack, Bant Company. And I think a lot of those choices that you made are really great for trying to push people into actually building those kinds of older decks, like the duplicates. If there are going to be two Splinter Twins, then that gives people multiple chances to get Splinter Twin. Also have a deck that is much more focused on Splinter Twin because you actually have two copies of it. And compared to a 60 card deck having four copies, 40 card deck having two copies, I mean, the ratio is still pretty high of drawing one of your two copies. And then also the picking two and having more cards, three packs of 20, so 60 cards instead of 45, you really get a much more cohesive deck that you're able to make a lot more cuts. You're able to take a lot more fixing and also be able to really focus on that specific synergy that you're going for. So I think all of these aspects coming together really creates for a really interesting environment, I bet, that I would be excited to try.
Yeah, I've also done a lot of iteration on the way that I do the singleton breaks. For a long time, I had the four fetches and four shocks. And what I was seeing was like there's just a bunch of shocks wheeling around because nobody's in the color. This is like what I call the breeding pool problem because there's not really a blue-green deck in this era of Modern except for like Bogles and Infect, which I don't support, and we'll talk about why later. But nobody wants the third breeding pool or the fourth breeding pool if anybody wanted the first and second in the first place. And I was looking at old lists. I get a lot of my information about this cube from MTG Top 8 and looking at the professional and competitive level events with like the top 8 lists and what was popular, what was successful at the time, that kind of thing. I noticed over time that it's like, oh, people aren't playing equal numbers of fetches and shocks. They're playing twice as many fetches as shocks, as you should. So I was like, okay, that was too many shocks. I will simply cut the shocks in half. So I went from 4 of each to 2 of each. That was a mistake because in draft, people don't play everything they draft. They will take a shock speculatively and then not play it. So I had actually reduced the shocks by more than half effectively. And so then I went back up to 3 copies. I never intended to do 3 of anything. My original goal was to do 4-2-1. But it turned out that for shocks specifically, the right number is 3 of each because then decks will have roughly twice as many fetches as shocks because you're very likely to play a fetch. But if you don't need that other color, you are less likely to play a shock. It's almost like a hybrid gold situation. And so that was like a learning thing. It was like, oh, okay, I can't do this. I can't recreate the environment faithfully in this way. I need to make a kind of a tweak to my parameters.
That's a really interesting aspect that you're mentioning because, sure, people play a lot more fetches in Constructed. People often play like 10 fetch lands and then 3 shock lands in total, and especially depending on the type of deck that you are. If you're trying to really do deck thinning and try and remove the lands from a more aggressive deck or something. But then there's also the aspect of the actual draft itself. We're not playing constructed. People are going to be drafting. So, like you said, if people speculatively take the shock lands and then there just aren't enough for people to go around, then it becomes very awkward having a lot of fetches with no fetchables. And another part that's interesting about the land base is so you include fetches, you include shocks. Why do you also include some lands that aren't fetchable in addition? For example, the fast lands like Concealed Courtyard, and then also the man lands. Why not just go all in on fetches and shocks? Because those were the most powerful lands that showed up the most often.
So the fetches and shocks are, like I said, there's 4 and 3 of all of them, and there's not really any kind of deck consideration given to those. It's just this is the mana that is going to make your decks work, whatever you're doing. The non-fetchables is where I can kind of express what the decks are actually about. So famously, Jund wanted to play Blackcleave Cliffs on turn 1. so that it could either Thoughtseize or Lightning Bolt. They didn't need to do anything else on turn one. They needed either Thoughtseize or Lightning Bolt. So they were playing Black Cleave Cliffs more than any other fast land in the deck. Then they would want turn two Tarmogoyf for something or Scavenging Ooze or whatever, and then they would need their green source after that. So maybe they're playing Copperline Gorge, but they're definitely playing Black Cleave Cliffs. In addition, the blue-white fast land was really only interesting to humans, but the creature land, Celestial Colonnade, was like the win condition of control. So we've got to have that. And then it's just kind of on down the line. I also have Kessig Wolfrun, and in green-white, which is like, I think the one I have the most copies of lands in, you have Gavany Township, which can go with like Persist combo, or it can just go in humans, go wide, things like that. And then in Simic, I don't have anything except the fetches and shocks because there's not really any blue-green pair that cares about the creature land or the fast land or anything like that. We just don't need it. But red-white wants the red-white fast land for burn and doesn't really need any other of the red-white lands. So that is kind of an opportunity to express what the color pairs are interested in, especially if you recognize decks from the era.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like having four Misty, but only three breeding pools, because, like you said, blue green wasn't really a super supported deck except for very parasitic decks for
Mm-hmm.
cube, like you said, like Boggles or Infect. So the Misties can just be played by other decks if they're not going blue green. You can just play
Mm-hmm.
off-color fetches, and then if nobody's going blue green that draft, or let's say they're going Bant for like something like Bant Company, then the breeding pools can be taken by those decks and
Mm-hmm.
not completely go to waste.
Yep.
Very cool. And so this deck is really built around, instead of what a lot of, I think, cube curators do, supporting archetypes. Like, oh, I'm going to have a red-white aggro. I'm going to have a green-blue lands, or I'm going to have a white-blue control. Instead, it's really focused on recreating actual decks, which is really cool. I want to do an exercise with you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, for example, Jund, classic Jund for modern at that time. Can you walk me through step by step how you decided to recreate that in here? For example, was it about trying to actually put in cards that fit the curve of how that modern deck looked like when you would look at MTG Top 8? And how would you go about distributing enough effects that are important to that Jund deck, but also important to other decks of that time, that all the pieces don't get completely eaten up by other decks? Tell me about that. If you could walk me through it, I would love to hear it.
Sure. Jund is an especially flexible deck because it is like mid-range and will
That's true.
take almost any pieces necessary to accomplish its goal. It does want to see certain cards more than other decks. I think Bloodbraid Elf is probably better in Jund than even Gruul Aggro in the Zoo decks. Liliana the Veil, there is a Pox deck, there's an 8-rack deck, so those want Liliana the Veil, but Jund also would love to see Liliana the Veil. It's like exactly what its strategy wants to see. So it will take things like that and accomplish its goal. And the way that I constructed it, the way I construct most cubes, honestly, is that I put in as few cards that are for one deck only as possible. And that is kind of, again, getting back to why I don't support things like Tron, Infect, Affinity, is if you take Arcbound Ravager and then Robots is not supported, there's not enough affinity pieces, that card is just dead to you. You're not going to play a 2-mana 1/1. You can't modular onto anything. It's just a wasted pick. So my goal here is that everything that you pick is either hate picking another deck that needs that card, or is a sideboard piece like Torpor Orb or something that you can bring in whenever the timing is right, or is a card that is good enough to play in your deck as like a 24th card or something. When we're building the Jund strategy, a lot of it is already accomplished by the fact that I have 4 copies of their favorite card, Lightning Bolt, Thoughtseize, and Tarmogoyf. So they are more set up for success than some of the other decks like Naya Zoo, which may not want a 3rd copy of Path to Exile, but Jund will always take a 3rd copy of Thoughtseize. That's fine. A lot of their favorite cards are here and work in other places, like I said. I don't know that there are any Jund-only cards except maybe Olivia Voldaren. That's probably as niche as we get. Like I said, it's a pretty broad archetype that will take whatever pieces it needs to get there. Thrun, the Last Troll, is like an old Jund card that was used sometimes, but I think like Green-White would also play that card.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've said Jund, which is probably the worst example I could have said, is like you said, they just play whatever they have, and every Jund deck looks really different. But there are also archetypes in here that, like you said, you didn't include some of the most parasitic. Like, for example, Tron, you would have had to include a ton of Tron lands, and then
Mhm.
nobody else would have wanted those lands. Or also something like Infect. which what you're gonna throw in a bunch of 1 mana 1/1s with infect and pump spells, and then all those cards are dead except for that one deck, and even that one deck would probably not come together great. But let's say something like humans. For
Mhm.
example, the card Kessig Malcontent, which
Yep.
is 3 mana, 3/1. When it enters, it deals damage to target player equal number of humans you control. So how do you go about supporting something like humans? Is it do you include a lot of humans that are good in other archetypes? So it's not just a bunch of weird humans that only fit in humans, and then you just pepper in a few payoffs for it?
I was very lucky with humans in that I love creature type decks, and creature type decks are inherently parasitic. But human is so broad that I can fit in a bunch of cards like this that do go in other archetypes. So Kessing Malcontents, for example, can go in burn. It's not great, but if you've got Harsh Mentor, Monastery Swiftspear, if you've got a density of humans already that you're playing, this can come in and just, 4 damage to the opponent's face, and that's fine as like your 24th card. If you didn't get enough, lightning bolt effects, it is a card that is okay. If you were in a real pinch, you could put Splinter Twin on it, and you could have a 3/1 with haste that does 2 damage at minimum every turn. That's kind of where my head is at, is like, what's the floor on all these cards? Who's going to play them in a pinch? The kind of logic or philosophy behind this is it's supposed to feel like modern when you're going to an RCQ and your friend who was going to lend you cards doesn't show up. And you have to scramble and fill in like 4 slots with cards that are in your binder. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll play Kessig Malcontents because I have it. And if I don't, my deck won't come together at all. And so that's the, I guess, flavor behind the deck building or the draft, instead of just being a battle box of decks that we could take out and play classic Jund versus Blue Eye Control. It's more like, let's try to assemble Jund and Blue Eye Control in this group of 8 people also assembling similar decks.
Were there any specific types of strategies that you found really difficult to support that you would have wanted to support? Like, for example, I do see some cards that I would say are dredge cards, kind of like
Yeah.
Faithless Looting, Vengevine, Bloodghast. But then at the same time, I'm not seeing like Golgari Grave Troll. Tell me about that.
So yeah, I did try Golgari Grave Troll. I tried a little bit of a graveyard deck. I had Stinkweed Imp, but it's so hard to get right and make the cards appealing to other people and not just the graveyard deck. So I have kept in Satyr Wayfinder because there's actually a really cool Return to the Ranks deck with like Abzan Ascendancy, and you can like sack your board to Viscera Seer and then bring it all back with Return to the Ranks because you can use the spirits to convoke. Anyway, so there are pieces of the graveyard deck and Faithless Looting Vengevine that can go in other decks. My dream, and this is a long shot, I know, my dream is to Faithless Looting away a Vengevine and then do the turn 2 Burning Tree Emissary Reckless Bushwhacker, get back Vengevine. That's beautiful. Obviously, I'm a red-green aggro player at heart, but that kind of thing, I think, is something that you can support. But Golgari Grave Troll is doing nothing unless it's doing everything. It's so strong, or it's just filling up your graveyard. And then I couldn't put in cards that were like Conflagrate that no one's going to play except this deck. So that's another thing, is that every deck has to have answers. And if I have to put in cards like Rest in Peace, or I already have Relic of Progenitus, but if I have to put in more graveyard hate pieces, then like the deck is already hard to come together and I have to keep it in check. But if I keep it in check, the deck does nothing at all. It becomes like this weird back and forth that doesn't go anywhere. So that's one that I stopped supporting. I recently also gave up on Blood Moon effects at the Salt Box. A player was making kind of a prison deck with Blood Moon, Magus the Moon, some land destruction. Their opponents would be like, oh, I just lost the Blood Moon. I will simply sideboard in basics and change my fetch habits. And they were like, oh, okay. So yeah, this Blood Moon plan is just pointless now. So they would
That's
just
so
like annoy
funny.
their opponent and then lose. And like I have to think about the context shift that I'm introducing by taking these cards from where they were and constructed where you can blindside an opponent in a room of 20, 4 times in a row at FNM. But here you're sitting at a pot of 8. Everyone knows what you've drafted either after the first round or mid draft, they figure it out. And so they can adjust their strategy. You couldn't add more basics at FNM, but you can here because this is limited. So that is going in a more Ponza direction. It's been really interesting seeing what I can and can't support, what is like just on the fringes of playable and what's not. I had a really cool story from one of my friends who I was playing with in the era where the opponent used Nahiri or through the Breach to put Emrakul in play. Emrakul attacks and puts Annihilator 6 on the stack. This player is playing Bant Spirits, and they activate Aether Vial. They put into play Phantasmal Image as a copy of Strangleroot Geist. They let Annihilator 6 resolve, including sacrificing Phantasmal Strangleroot Geist. Undying Trigger. They enter as a copy of Emrakul with a plus counter.
Oh my
They
gosh.
block Emrakul and kill it. Then on their turn, they kill them. They attack back and kill them with their 16/16 Emrakul.
That's insane because protection from colored spells, so it
Yep.
can die.
Yep. And so that story is so cool, and all the cards are in this cube. I was like, oh, maybe I can support Bant Spirits. Because I already have Strangleroot Geist. I got Phantasmal Image, which isn't actually a spirit, but I've got some spirits in here. Maybe I could change either Sworn Canonist to Eidolon of Rhetoric, or maybe I could add Spirit of the Labyrinth. Maybe I could add Kira the Great Glass Spinner. And I looked at it, I looked at like all the changes I would make to do this, and I went, that's still not really a deck. Like, I don't think people are going to play these 8 spirits, especially not like Eidolon of the Great Revel in this deck. Like, no one's going to do Bant spirits, much less 5 color spirits. So there's a couple of things that I have tried to see if I can support and just don't quite get there. So this is still possible in a Bant company deck. It's just, the exact circumstances under which it came isn't going to happen here.
That's so interesting what you were saying about people bringing in more basics to stop Blood Moon. Have you considered making changes to the gameplay to make it feel more like constructed? Like saying that you can't get basics during the games like that, or saying that you have to restrict your sideboard to only pick 15 cards. Have you ever considered doing things that would make it feel more like constructed?
That is an interesting thought. I haven't considered it. I'm thinking now it probably changes it a little too much from Cube because we do want it to feel like Cube still. And the question is always how many special rules is too many whenever you're introducing somebody to your environment. If this was something that I was playing every week with like a group of people, I probably would be a little bit more interested in getting it just right and adding whatever rules are necessary. But since this is one that I'm more like touring around and taking with me to places and be like, hey, do you want to play museum while it's here? I do kind of want to just say 3 packs of 20 double picks go and kind of leave it at that. But that is a cool idea.
That's a really interesting point, like you said. I'm sure that if somebody else brought a cube to Vertex and they told the judge, oh, by the way, make sure that they only put 15 cards in their sideboard and they're not allowed to get basics after you have to take away the basic box. I think that you would be upset with that
Yeah,
person.
that's probably also what I'm doing is like, would I want to explain this to a judge as I handed it over? No, so I'm not going to do it to myself.
Yeah. And tell me about what the decks actually end up looking like in this cube. Do people, after the draft, when you're looking at what everyone drafted, you see, oh, somebody has twins, somebody has burns, somebody has blue-white control, somebody has Jun, somebody has Zoo. Does it really end up being that every deck that people draft really looks like one of these constructed decks? And when you look at their list, you're like, wow, this is like 90% like the constructed deck. And like you said, a few random cards added in to fill it in from the trade binder? Or is it more like people are just building, oh, I took some blue and red cards that look good and like actually somebody would do when they're normally drafting cube and it just became a blue red good cards deck, or oh, I went Grixis, which wasn't really a deck in modern at that time, but hey, I saw some good Grixis cards. Tell me what the decks look like.
So this is a great question, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this at Saltbox actually. And I have a picture recently on my phone where I'm watching players play, and they both have twin combo in their deck. One of them is playing Blue Moon Control with like Keranos is going to be one of their win conditions. They have the moon effects, they have Vidalcan Shackles, and then they have Deceiver Exarchs in play, and they're just waiting for their minute to play twin with counterspell support. The opponent in this game I'm watching is on Grixis control, and they have 2 Pestermites in their hand and twin, and they're waiting for the moment. They can't like put their shields down to do it. They know what is in the opponent's hand because they're on Grixis control. They've thought seized, so they know what's in the opponent's hand. The opponent can suspect what's in their hand, so it's this waiting game. But Keranos is going to kill the Grixis control player if they don't do the twin quickly. So really interesting tension in that specifically, but that is what often comes up, is that there will be a shell of a deck with another deck inside of it. So Grixis Control with a twin finish versus Blue Moon featuring twin. I see a lot of decks at that same event. I saw a finals between Scape Shift with Saheeli Cat combo in the deck, but it is Scape Shift. If they get to 7 lands, they're going to Scape Shift and get Valakut, and 6 mountains. But they also have Saheeli Cat. So they're using Saheeli to plus and scry and like try to dig for that piece. And if the opponent goes shields down, they can just play Felidar and win the game. The opponent is on Death Shadow, but it's Delver aggro with just the black splash for Death Shadow. And they got all these fetches and shocks, and they have Thoughtseize, so they can get their life total down really fast. And I watched them go turn 1, fetch shock Thoughtseize, turn 2, Snapcaster, Gitaxian Probe, and then Gitaxian Probe again. So life total was really low. And then like turn 3, 4/4 Death Shadow, and then attack with like Snapcaster Mage.
Wow.
You're just on like this blue-red tempo deck with a little bit of black splash, but if you get all the pieces to line up just right, it feels a lot like Death Shadow, and then you're in danger.
So the decks still have like the feeling of those modern decks.
Right, and I think the thing is that you don't have to see the full 60 card list to feel like the modern deck. You just have to feel a couple of interactions come together, some packages that were played in modern, because even in constructed, people were tinkering with cards, 32 through 36 all the time. It's just that core never changes. Like, this is what Twin needs to succeed. Here's some things I'm trying to see if this is the best version of Twin. Those little outside orbiting pieces changed all the time in constructed. They just change a lot more frequently here because of the nature of draft.
Yeah, really interesting. So have you ever had somebody like draft, this is exactly what I imagined, the perfect blue-red Twin deck. Like, if you were to add some more cards to this to make it 60 cards, it would be the Twin deck.
I haven't because of your specific example, Twin. Twin is always fought over because it's so legendarily powerful. But I have seen somebody get the perfect birthing pod deck. They got both birthing pods. Nobody else was interested in doing any of their creature shenanigans. So they had persist combo. They had all these weird redundancies like Eternal Witness, Revelark, Sun Titan. Like, they could restart their chain at any point in the chain. It was just perfect because nobody else went for the pieces they went for. And of course, it doesn't look quite like the 60 card because you're using all 2s and 1s. But other than that, yeah, it was very emblematic of, if you look at an MTG top 8 list, it's got every non-land that they have in their deck in this deck.
Really cool. And another question I have for you is, how do you toe the line between deciding to put cards into the cube because I want to include more of a specific cube effect because it makes it more fun for actually cubing? Like, when you think of it from a cube perspective, compared to adding cards because you want to make it feel like the modern of old. For example, I see you have all 5 of the swords.
Mm-hmm.
Not all 5 of the swords saw play in modern, from my memory.
Correct. So the 5 swords thing, I am doing a little bit of modern revisionist history on a couple of cards. So, for example, I really liked Harsh Mentor. Not a lot of decks were playing Harsh Mentor. I think it's so
a little
cool.
bit when it came
I think
out,
it saw a little bit of play. I think it is so cool that it makes your fetch lands bolt you. I think it's so cool that it stops Twin from killing you unless they have a bunch more life than you. I think it's so cool that it's a human and works in that, and it works in Burn, and it works in Zoo, and like, it's just a really good role player. I'm more happy with that card than most people, and so I'm including it, designer's privilege. The same can be said for Sig River Cutthroat. I think one niche Merfolk deck played that in a sideboard, but I want that deck for Black-Red Burn. If you're playing Bump in the Night, lightning bolts that draw you cards, that's pretty cool. If you're playing 8-Rack, if the opponent is under Shrieking Affliction, you get to draw a card every time that they lose a 3 life from it. And it's not actually representative of that, but it is making one of my archetypes work a little better. The swords is where I'm really revising history. They did see play, not Body and Mind. The rest of them did see play. Sometimes like fairies would play like Light and Shadow sometimes. And, Fire and Ice was always a sometimes treat for like Hate Bears kind of thing. I unbanned Stoneforge in my format on time. They waited too long to unban it in real life. I think they could have unbanned it years earlier and it would have been just fine. And I'm doubling down on that by making it a whole deck here. I think that Hate Bears is really cool, and it gets a little bit of extra sauce by having Stoneforge. I had 4 swords. I didn't have Body and Mind for a long time. Body and Mind, again, blue and green aren't great colors to have protection from anyway, because it's not really a blue-green deck. Like you said, it's usually Bant Company, or it is some sort of like team or twin thing. But in constructed, milling 10 cards did not hurt that much. In limited, it is quite a clock, and you need to answer the creature that is holding that sword very quickly. So I also enjoy having the full 5 swords plus Batterskull as like, these are the Stoneforge targets. You don't have to worry about anything else. There's nothing weird. There's no Basilisk Collar. It's just the 5 swords and Batter Skull. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, some cards just become better because it's a 40 card deck, like you said, sort of body and mind. Did not see any modern play, but in a 40 card deck, it can be really powerful. It's a clock.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit of designer privilege of revisionist history. This is the kind of thing that I want in this cube that is not exactly a time capsule card, but we're gonna do it anyway.
And nobody remembers modern that well anyway.
Unfortunately.
You can just tell them, yeah, it's up play. Come on, I saw the deck list. Come on.
Yeah, I'm gonna teach new players this is what modern was like, and they're gonna find out someday that I lied to them.
Come on, everybody played Tragic Slip. It was a 4 of. Come on.
Yeah, that's another good point. You mentioned like trying to achieve density of certain effects for the thing. Black removal has come a long way, and there is an argument for my iconic 4 of in black to be Fatal Push instead of Thoughtseize. I love Thoughtseize so much, especially the Lorwyn Fairy art. It's the splash image for the cube, but I would really like to have that density of black removal. So that's something I struggle with. I have Smallpox, which is technically removal. I have Murder's Cut. Hero's Downfall's digging pretty deep.
Go for the throat.
Go for the throat. Go for the throat is played. That's certainly good. Tragic Slip, that's another kind of like, this is what I was playing because I couldn't afford Fatal Push. I was playing Tragic Slip in my little Aristocrats deck because it was so easy to turn on Morbid.
Yeah, it's really interesting when it comes to the cards you decided to do duplicates of. For example, Path to Exile. There was no good white removal for so long. That's why Path to Exile saw so much play, even though Path to Exile is not a good card. So basically, I feel like we're forced to put 4 of Pat.
Yeah.
Now we say have Leyline Binding, Prismatic Ending.
Oh, yeah. We don't want to talk about those cards here.
Yeah. And same with Thoughtseize. You had Inquisition, you had Thoughtseize, and other than that, it was pretty bad. Compared to, like you said, the removal. You could put in more removal spells, it's fine. And another topic I want to talk to you about is, we mentioned it briefly, but having sideboard cards. I feel like most cubes do not focus on sideboard at all. Like they include maybe a couple little pieces of Grave Hate, and maybe you could main deck, or you could just bring it in a couple matchups. But this cube has some very much what I would say sideboard cards. Feed the Clan. Green, gain some life against burn. That's pretty good. Thrun, that is really good against control and those kinds of decks. The swords will just win some matchups if you bring it in against certain decks. And also things like Engineered Explosives, classic sideboard card, Relic of Progenitus. Tell me about these sideboard cards and how often do people play them in the main deck, or are they really sideboard cards?
I will occasionally see a card like Engineered Explosives in the main. It's pretty rare to see Feed the Clan in a main deck.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Certainly not Torpor Orb. There's degrees to it. Part of this to me is that some of the most iconic interactions of playing at the time was knowing how to play around certain sideboard cards. Specifically, what comes to mind is Relic of Progenitus. So like what this does to Tarmogoyfs and like knowing that this is the trick that's on board all the time to make Tarmogoyf a 0/1. Do I hold up an instant so that when they pop their relic, I can immediately bolt them and now my Goyf does something? It's not going to die to their 2/2 or their 1/1, I guess. That's so iconic to me. Like Phyrexian Revoker, does it name Twin or does it name something else that could also kill you? Do you save it until they've got their Pestermite down? If there's some way for you to like either vial it in, you save it as long as possible to surprise them, or do you play it early so that they have to answer it and you can start beating them with a 2/1? There's a lot of play around sideboard cards if you are from the era, and I think that you quickly pick up on it if you play this. There are also just not ways to fight certain decks on their axes without cards like this. So if you're playing against Persist combo and you're playing a deck that just doesn't have the removal density to answer things on time, or maybe doesn't have any shatters for Birthing Pod, you can get Grafdigger's Cage and you can bring it in. And now they have to modify their strategy or they have to answer Grafdigger's Cage. They may have Reclamation Sage. They may not know that they needed Reclamation Sage and they may not be able to combo off this game. But every deck in the cube, by the nature of the kind of scrappy DIY deck building, isn't all in on their strategy. They can just win through combat. Just because they can't gain infinite life with Kitchen Finks anymore doesn't mean that they can't win. In many cases, they can still attack you with Kitchen Finks and it will always come back and live if you block it. So it becomes a new kind of strategy. So the sideboard pieces of Hate are I think, an integral part of the environment. And picking them has been really interesting because you noted earlier about Rest in Peace. I don't have that because it is so narrow. Yes, it would be great against Tarmogoyfs. Yes, it would turn off Delirium for the kind of the black green deck. But that's all it does. There's not any deck that's going to kill you if they have a graveyard, with the exception of having big Tarmogoyfs. There's not a dredge or anything that's so all in that you get murdered for not having Rest in Peace on time.
Yeah, there are definitely some sideboard cards that are really brutal. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I used to play Storm and they would bring in Damping Sphere, and I'd be like, what am I doing? I want to go
Yeah.
home.
Yeah. How can I win now? Yeah. Ideally,
Yep.
there is nothing that is, it is impossible for me to win now. You have turned off my strategy with this Leyline of the Void or whatever.
Yeah. And let's jump into a pack one pick two from the cube.
Oh,
So
perfect.
I'll read it off here. We got Verdant Catacombs, Sulphur Falls, Deceiver Exarch, Tarmogoyf, Wooded Foothills, Huntmaster of the Fells, Lingering Souls, Noble Hierarch, Faithless Looting, Luxodon Smiter, Sakura Tribe Elder, Lightning Bolt, Tide Hollow Sculler, Is It Staticaster, Anger of the Gods, Eidolon of the Great Rebel, Fulminator Mage, Stomping Ground, Monastery Swiftspear, and Cavern of Souls. This becomes really interesting because we're taking two now. What do
Hmm.
you think of this pack?
I don't want to affect your opinion, so I would like to hear what
You want
you.
me here first?
I
Oh
want to hear from you
no.
first. Yeah.
Ooh. There's a few directions
Hmm.
that I would consider. I love anything Bant and Value and Jank. So Noble Hierarch plus like a Wooded Foothills or a Verdant Catacombs is very tempting to me.
Sure.
Also, Monastery Swiftspear and Eidolon. Just go in red. Or really, it would probably be better to do Eidolon Lightning Bolt. That probably
Hmm.
makes more sense. Also, you could just take Verdant Catacombs, Wooded Foothills,
Stay very
and
open.
and just stay open and be like one of those people that I'm posting my pack one pick one on Reddit and ooh, of course you take the fetch from this pack. Why'd you even post this pack? I just be one
Yeah.
of those people. So there's a few different directions here. I'm feeling spicy. Let's go Lightning Bolt Eidolon. Let's kill him dead.
Very good. I am more proud of this cube's pack one pick one potential than any other. I actually had one back when Twitter was usable. I had one, the pack like this, 19 of the 20 cards were called out for pack one pick two possibilities. The 20th card, by the way, was Gnarlwood Dryad, which is a very niche, delirium. Nobody wants to first pick this thing. Maybe it'll wheel around. But that pack had like double smallpox, and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, I'm obviously in on the super smallpox plan." There's like the Restoration Angel, and people were like, "Oh, I can go Resto combo, or I can go Resto value." So this pack is similar to that, where I'm just like, this is so juicy and is exactly what I love about this cube. That there's almost is like, all right, drafter, what do you like? Because if you really want to do twin, here's Sulphur Falls Deceiver Exarch. This is a great start. If
Yeah.
you really want to do burn, here's Monastery Swiftspear Lightning Bolt or Eidolon, like you said. If you really want to do Jund, here's Goyf, two different fetches and a shock in the colors, or Fulminator Mage. You have tons of options to do what you like to do. And so in my bias, I am also looking at Noble Hierarch, but it's because I love humans. This has the Cavern of Souls. So I'm looking at Cavern Noble, and then I expect we can wheel around Is It Staticaster because it's so narrow. And then that's a sideboard card I love to have in humans because you can beat up Pestermites, you can get fairy tokens from Bitter Blossom, you can get spirit tokens from Lingering Souls. It can do a lot of surprise damage.
Interesting. I thought that I was cutting you off on purpose with Lightning Bolt Eidolon. I thought that you were going to be all irritated.
Well, there's three more lightning bolts and one more
That's true.
Eidolon, so we
I
could
thought
fight
you were going to
over it.
say you're cutting me off burn after I just said I love burn.
I do love burn, but I also really love zoo aggro. So there's days where I would just take Tarmogoyf Stomping Ground and just hope for the best, see what else comes around in those colors.
That's true. That's true. Great pack. It definitely adds a lot of texture to be able to take two. Definitely.
Yeah, that's one of my other favorite things is not just like, oh, well, this is clearly the best card, end of discussion. It is, okay, this is my favorite card, and this is the second card I would take. And they're like, oh, you're crazy. Obviously, that is the best card, but the second best card is this instead of that. And then you have all these people arguing about what's the best first and second. And then you've got people completely disagree and go, neither of those cards are what I want to do. I want to do these two cards. So that's my favorite.
Some audience engagement. I
There
would
you
love to
go.
hear from people in the audience what they think about cubes where you take two every pick because Cogbook Librarian is one of my favorite cards. So if I can do that every pack, maybe I should just start running my cubes with 16 card packs take two every pick. Maybe I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
Yeah, nothing needs to wheel.
Yes. And Austin, Judge Bones, it's been awesome having you on the show. We've had some great discussion today. Anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I will probably see you at a Cube event if you are going to be at any local Cube events. I have Boston coming up for me, which will be in the past for
Boston
you.
Cube Party. Woo!
Yeah. And then I should still be the future. We'll be at Washington Cube Champs for the first time. I wasn't there their first event, and I'm excited to be there for their second one. And then I don't know after that. I told my wife that I would travel 6 times this year, and then I booked the first 5 months. So we will see what my sixth trip ends up being. Could be KubeCon, could be something else. We will find out when the time is there. But I am excited to see people at Cube events. It's been really great so far this year, and I can't wait to do more of it.
You don't want to blow your quota too fast. You only get six.
Yeah, well, I've got to be really careful with this last.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you could please like, subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff, I'd appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon for more Cube action.
Bye.